Dear Harstem, Storm is the most ridiculous thing in StarCraft 2, not to mention StarCraft 1 Storm. My opponent holds 140 supply of Zerg with 13 High Templar and some shield batteries. It is completely insane how Protoss gets a point and click death spell that eradicates anything under it. 2 actually, but my opponent was incapable of building a Robo Bay, so disruptors were never seen. I opened with a standard hatch gas pool versus this Protoss. My scouting is bad, I miss his fast Twilight, and as a result lose my third to a DT rush. But I kill all the DTs and retake my third. I know I am behind, so I go for a 3-base Roach all-in with +2/+2. I hit before 10 minutes with 140 supply of Roach Ravager and creep in my opponent's third base. This is where the imbalance starts. I know that I shouldn't have lost my third to DTs. I should have had a fourth and a good economic situation versus this Protoss. But the fact of the matter is, I should at least kill a base with 140 army supply and +2/+2 on creep. My opponent somehow has 13 High Templar and next to nothing else but static defense. I A-move up the ramp and meet no resistance and start attacking the third base. I only see High Templar and 2 chrono-boosted robotics facilities with no units. This should be an easy win, right? High Templar have no health and barely have an attack, but storm after storm shred my roaches, and I can't reach the Templars because of a shield battery SimCity. I drop 70 supply nearly instantly. A quick warp in of Zealots and 2 Immortals finish off the rest of my army that has been reduced to a single-digit HP from like 40 storms. My push is completely stopped, and I have basically lost the game because I am unable to reproduce my 70 larva worth of army versus 2 warp-in cycles of Templar. I try to fight off the Protoss in the center of the map, but I can't beat the mass immortal Templar army. So tell me, is Storm IMBA? Or do I suck? This was sent in by Paladin, a North American diamond player at 3500 MMR, who says that Storm is too strong. And we're here to figure out if he's right. So is Storm IMBA? Or does he suck? Here we have our game between Paladin, our Blue Zerg player, and the Storm Worm. I love that nickname. In isolation, without any of the context, I would already love that nickname. I think it's a great nickname. But then the fact that this guy apparently only rushes Storm and batteries makes it much, much better. I just love the fact that what he's about to do is in his nickname. As I'm really curious what's gonna end up happening here. Because there's a couple of, let's call them suspicious things that I kind of want to point out immediately here. The first suspicious thing that I want to talk about is the fact that he pretends like hitting with 140 army supply of roaches at 10 minutes is a good timing. Because it's not. That is probably like 2.5 minutes after you're supposed to be hitting. And hitting with 2-2 doesn't make a whole lot of sense either. I feel like the carapace upgrades don't actually help that much for roaches in a massive all-in. I don't feel like the investment in there is that important. I would like range attack upgrades, maybe +1, maybe +2, but I'm not sure if we should really be investing in carapace this early because it delays our push. We also have some fairly interesting scouting positions here with the Overlord. This is my favorite thing in the entire world, is when lower level players invent new Overlord positions despite being completely capable of just copying Overlord positions of professional players. Maybe we should do a quick comparison. How about that, huh? So a professional Zerg would put their Overlord over here on top of this ramp. Now, what does that have? It shows you when Warp Gate starts. It shows you what units are being sent out from the gateway or what units are being built from the gateway. You have vision on both of the bases, both third bases, because both bases can be taken as a third base. So you know where the probe is going. And on top of that, you see the probe return with the Overlord. These are the things that an Overlord should be capable of doing. This is why this map has such a sick position. This one position, which is completely safe, this pillar, is capable of doing all of that. We have Paladin, who picked a different position. Now, what are the properties, the characteristics of this position? It can see whether a unit is being produced. It can see which unit it is, or if it's being sent across the map. It has full vision of one of the third bases. It is not safe, so this is a security risk. It doesn't see the probe come back either, but it is capable of inhaling the fumes of this Vespene geyser. So if this Overlord wants to get high, it is definitely possible. Basically, you give up a bunch of useful things like security and the ability to see things for the ability to get high, which, you know, for some people is very important, but in StarCraft 2, usually not as much. I'd recommend just putting it on the spot where every single pro gamer has been putting it for the past, I don't know, 12 months, for however long Golden Aura has been in the map pool already. Because this position brings you absolutely nothing. Although you can see that no unit is being produced. There's one hell of a wall as well. Love to see it. Probe is just patrolling around in vision. Second Overlord is just hanging in the main base. Yeah, some wild spots. I also love that this Overlord is here and technically could just go and scout, which is kind of what you want to be doing if you have 2 Overlords. But you probably want to scout right around now, before you start making rash decisions like throwing down a Roach Warren. Like, this is kind of the point of the double Overlord, is that you scout before you need to respond to something, because then your scout can be the response. This just doesn't make a whole lot of sense. This is first deciding an action and then getting intel. It's like you can't change your course anymore after the intel. Like, the Roach Warren is already here. If your opponent had opened up with a Stargate, you would be stuck with a Roach Warren right now. If your opponent had opened up with Glaives, you would be stuck with building 2 Spores right now. So this is really the worst of both worlds. It's phenomenal stuff. Absolutely. You see a single unit in the wall, nothing else here, which should be kind of suspicious by itself. A pylon has managed to be dropped on the map as well, because you didn't realize that the probe hadn't gone home. You haven't been scouting around with Lynx either. You build Spores in every base except on the 3rd. So these DTs are going to walk in and they're just going to slash this 3rd. So not a huge fan here of the double Evo chamber. Like, I love upgrades as much as any other guy, okay? But generally, a good rule for Zerg players, as a general rule, a rule of thumb, is that if you don't know whether your opponent has a 3rd or not, don't get an Evo chamber. And also don't get 2 Evo chambers. That technically is worse. And right now, although your opponent has a 3rd base, you're not aware of it. So you're not allowed to do this. Because upgrades take a really long time to kick in. If you're being all in off of 2 bases, 6 minutes into the game, both of these Evo chambers are going to be a massive investment into something that's going to serve no purpose whatsoever for you. Like, it just doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Your position also genuinely is god-awful. Yes, losing your 3rd base was very bad, but you also just have way too little drones, you have way too many links, you've built too many buildings too early, you're floating 6 larvae right now, which I don't quite understand. I'm pretty sure you missed injects, because you just have such an insanely low drone count. We're almost 6 minutes in and you're at 35 right now. And I like that you kind of pretended like this was a minor issue, like a hiccup on the road towards a massive road supply max. But really, if I look at the current situation and I were to judge it, I'm giving our Protoss player about a 95, maybe like a 98% win rate here, just based on this position, if the players are close to being equally skilled. Okay, he's up in workers, he's up in tech, he has a 3rd base that is mining, he has DTs, which can perhaps still do something. You don't even have a 3rd base on the way yet. This is a god-awful move by our Protoss player, which is, gonna cost him 4 Dark Templar, as well as a recall, apparently. Gonna lose the Archon before it gets the recall. Double Forge, and he's getting Storm. So here comes the Storm Worm. He's gonna go hard. 1-1 upgrades. I mean, that's something, I guess. I wouldn't even mind seeing a double expand. And actually what you want to be doing is, if you're this far behind, is you probably just want to camp. You want to go into Roach, Ravager, and then try to get into Lurker on 4 bases, eventually get a 5th base. Because there should be no way in hell that you're going to be capable of killing your opponent. Like, your opponent has much better eco, much quicker tech, much more, like, there's many more units. Your opponent is ahead in every possible way. it sounds near impossible to kill him with any type of attack. So I'd much prefer a more drone-focused play right now. I mean, there's plenty of cash in the bank to build some drones, to build a fort base, get an infestation pit out, and try to tech into a Hydra then. This is the beauty, really, of lower-level games, is that even if your early game is complete balls, you can almost always still transition into a campy composition because no one has a clue how to finish games. If you get 5 lurkers out, this guy's absolutely gonna poop his pants. Like, absolutely. His entire army so far, not great against lurkers. He also has no aggressive potential out on the map right now. What you're seeing here is a Protoss player that is so afraid of dying that all he's doing is building defensive stuff. Batteries, cannon, Templar. That really is it. And he probably has a good reason to be afraid because you were on 2 base and you're also actually planning on all-inning. You're not scouting here whatsoever. You're not aware of the fact that he has a fort base. You're not aware of the fact, really anything, any of his tech, any of his forges. All you have seen so far is 4 DTs and that he has a 3rd base with 6 gases on it. So you should be expecting either Colossus, Disruptors, or Storm, to be quite honest. And this is not the army that I want to be building against what your opponent is doing. Your opponent also being up in supply where you're massing roaches is insane to me. Roaches are some of the most supply-heavy units in the game. They cost very little and they fill up a lot of supply. So you inflate your supply rapidly when you're building roaches. Like a big fat balloon. Yeah, I'm... Triple Robo. Do actually like that. Not sure about the positioning. I think I'd rather have them over here. This is a safer area if you want to have them outside of your wall. You're just continuing to build roaches. I also love that in the imbalanced complaint forum, you made this out to be some genius strategic choice. But you legit have 0 information. Like, something can only be a genius strategy if this strategy gets triggered by something. It's not like this is the ultimate solution to every problem you have. It's like, oh, I lose 4 bases, or I lost my 3rd base to 4 DTs. 2-2 roach all in. Oh, my opponent is rushing carriers. 2-2 roach all in. It's like, no, like, first of all, 2-2 roach all in doesn't exist, but if it were to exist, there probably would be a limited amount of things that it can kill, like everything in StarCraft. You know, everything has its counter, and you need to figure out by scouting what that counter is. And you can't just say, oh, I forgot to scout, or oh, I didn't scout so well, but my strategy was brilliant. It's like, well, it's not entirely how it works. Didn't you also say that you hit before 10 minutes? What did you say exactly? I hit before 10 minutes with 140 supply of Roach Ravager. If you say I hit before 10 minutes, I'm kind of expecting it to be at like 9:30. All right? I know this is a little bit nitpicky, but this is kind of pushing it. You know, this really is kind of pushing it. Is it 9:57 is when your Link start attacking the gateways. I'll give it to you though. I'll give it to you. How many Templar do we have? You have freaking 16 Templar, 8 Stalkers, 11 Zealots, 95 Probes, 1-1 upgrades versus 2-1. It's not even 2-2. Immortals are popping out already as well. Like, these armies are not the same. They're not at the same level at all. The ability to reinforce here is also not at the same level. Like, it should confuse you that your opponent has the ability to build 16 Templar who each seemingly have 2 Storms as well. There was freaking 30 Storms in this army while you were going for one of the quickest max outs. Your opponent managed to max out with Templar while you were maxing out with Roaches. Like, you were so far behind. It's also not like this creep did anything. Like, you can't brag about useless stuff. Holy crap. This is like me complaining that I lost a football match despite my brilliant ability to be capable of juggling 3 balls with my hands. It's like, what is the point of this creep? The fact that you hit at 9:57 instead of at 10:03? Like, these 5 seconds don't matter. You should have hit 2.5 minutes earlier. Not at this point. Like, what is the point? Why would you mention this? Like, this is somehow something that speaks to your brilliance as a player. It's a waste of mental resources focusing on spreading creep rather than focusing on injecting or scouting or having a good build order. You did none of those things. Instead, you spread creep till his base and then fought entirely off creep. This would have maybe made sense if your goal was to defensively survive. This makes no sense if you want to attack off creep anyway. You literally focus on everything that is wrong and then complain about your opponent who made a very good catch-all army against a ground force. Would have kind of sucked against Muras, not gonna lie. Would have kind of sucked if he ever had to move across the map before he's maxed out, not gonna lie. But because you attacked into him with 60 drones, yeah, you get absolutely blasted. This guy'd been saving storms since before Christ. And you walk into him with your primitive weapons, yeah, you're gonna die. You have pure roach. Then you also dare complaining about the fact that he can reproduce his army quicker. Yeah, first of all, he didn't lose as much of his army. And second of all, he has more infrastructure. If you had more than 3 hatcheries, you'd also be capable of reproducing very quickly, you clown. Like, that's kind of the point of Zerg, isn't it? Is that the more bases you have, the quicker your production goes. You don't have to add more production. That is a benefit. That is not a downside of your race. That is kind of the purpose. This is one of the massive upsides. That's a feature, not a bug. Yeah, of course, with Roach Ravager, an army that gets countered by Storm Immortal, you're not gonna have a very good time then afterwards either. Why is this guy so focused on clearing those rocks, though? This guy hates geology. He's been beaten too many times by Brock in Pokemon Yellow. I think it's the first gym in Pokemon Yellow. After you have like this massive maze, you get the guy that sends freaking 4 Judus at you, or like a golem or something. Is he called Golem? Golem? It's not the little guy from Lord of the Rings, it's the round ball. I think he can explode as well. Either way, I mean, this is... I find it stunning that you can look at this replay, see the fact that your opponent has 13 gates, 3 robots, double force, 5 base, 104 probes, after killing you with a DT attack basically in minute 5, and then daring to complain, while your army composition is also being hard countered. Like, there were no strategic calls. Your plan, probably from the start, was a 2-2 roach push, because that's probably what you do every single game. And this time it didn't work. You pretend like it was a genius call, while doing nothing correct. Like, mechanically, your opponent was better. Strategically, your opponent was better. Execution-wise, your opponent was much better. Honestly, micro-wise, your opponent was much better. Like, in what realm did you outplay your opponent in such a big way that you deserve to win? Like, maxing out at 10 minutes with 200 supply of roaches doesn't guarantee a win. And I don't want to live in a world where that guarantees a win, where every single time a Zerg manages to max out 10 minutes in, you get the W, you get the 26 MMR. Congratulations, you're not an idiot. Woohoo, IQ higher than 12. It's like, mate, this is a terrible game. You did a 3 base all-in against someone on 5 bases that was maxed out, similar upgrade as you, and you got absolutely blasted. Accept defeat gracefully, all right? Accept it gracefully. This was an imbalanced. Storm isn't imbalanced. And if it is imbalanced, this game for sure didn't show it. You just freaking suck, my dear friend. And that's the way that it is. And that's also the way that this is it for today's IODIS. Thanks all so much for watching. I hope you all did enjoy it. If you did, don't forget to hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and hopefully I'll see all of you next time for a new video. Bye-bye.